Pay attention to what you're seeing in this footage. It's grainy, shot on a handheld camera in the middle of the night somewhere in the Nevada desert. The person filming is breathing hard, their hands shaking as they try to keep the camera steady. And then you see it. Something that shouldn't exist. A creature with spotted skin like a giraffe, but the proportions are all wrong. The neck extends impossibly long, the head turns toward the camera, and for just a second you can see something in its eyes, something almost human. The footage cuts to black. This recording would become the key piece of evidence in a murder case that would expose one of the most disturbing scientific experiments ever conducted on American soil. What you're about to hear is the true story of Dr. Catherine Reeves and the night her obsession turned deadly. You know that feeling when you think you know someone, and then you discover they've been living a completely different life right under your nose? For the colleagues of Dr. Catherine Reeves, that moment came on a warm September night in 2016, and it shattered everything they thought they knew about the woman they'd worked alongside for nearly a decade. Catherine Reeves wasn't supposed to be a killer. At 47 years old, she was one of the most respected geneticists in the country, published in every major scientific journal, invited to speak at conferences around the world. She had a corner office at the Genesis BioTech Institute in Henderson, Nevada, a sprawling research facility about 20 miles outside Las Vegas. On paper, she was working on genetic therapies for degenerative diseases. Noble work. Life-saving work. Her colleagues described her as brilliant but intense. She'd arrive at the lab before sunrise and often wouldn't leave until well past midnight. Her assistant, 31-year-old Daniel Marsh, sometimes joked that Dr. Reeves had a cot hidden somewhere in the building because he'd show up at 6 a.m. and find her already deep in her research, looking like she'd never gone home. Daniel had worked with Catherine for 3 years. He trusted her, admired her even. He'd tell his friends that working for Dr. Reeves was like getting a masterclass in genetics every single day. But there was something else about her too, something that occasionally made him uncomfortable. The way she'd look at the lab specimens with this expression he couldn't quite read, like she was seeing something beyond the science, something personal. September 12th, 2016. That's the night everything went wrong. Daniel had been working late, finishing up some documentation on their current project. It was around 11 p.m. when he decided to head down to the restricted wing of the facility, Sublevel 3. Technically, he wasn't supposed to be down there without Dr. Reeves present, but he'd forgotten his phone in one of the storage rooms earlier that day. Quick in and out, he figured. No one would even know. The sublevel was always unsettling after hours. The fluorescent lights hummed too loud. The air circulation system made these periodic groaning sounds, and it was cold down there, kept at precisely 58 degrees for specimen preservation. Daniel found his phone right where he'd left it, tucked behind some supply boxes. He was about to leave when he heard something that made his blood run cold. It was a sound unlike anything he'd encountered before, not quite animal, not quite human. A low, guttural noise coming from behind the steel door marked, "Restricted access. Level 5 clearance only." Daniel had Level 3 clearance. He'd never been through that door, never even asked what was behind it. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe instinct, made him try the door handle. It was unlocked. Here's the thing about moments that change your life forever. You never see them coming. Daniel pushed that door open, expecting maybe some specialized equipment, maybe some sensitive research. What he found instead would haunt him for the rest of his life. The room was massive, at least 3,000 square feet, with industrial cages lining the walls. And inside those cages were creatures that shouldn't exist. Hybrids. Genetic experiments that blurred the line between human and animal in ways that violated every ethical code in modern science. There was a creature with spotted skin patterns like a giraffe, but with a humanoid skeletal structure. Another with primate features but scaled skin. A third that Daniel couldn't even fully process. The genetic combinations were so extreme that his mind struggled to categorize what he was seeing. But here's what made it even more horrific. These things were alive, conscious. Some of them looked at him with eyes that held unmistakable intelligence. One of them, the giraffe hybrid, pressed against the bars of its cage and made a sound that almost seemed like it was trying to speak. Daniel stood frozen for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. His brain was trying to process the impossible. Dr. Reeves had been conducting illegal genetic experiments, creating human-animal hybrids. And she'd been doing it right here, 3 floors beneath where they had their morning coffee and discussed quarterly goals. He needed to get out, document this, call someone, the authorities, the press, anyone. He pulled out his phone and started filming. His hands were shaking so badly that the footage came out grainy and unstable, but he captured it. The evidence. Proof that this nightmare was real. That's when he heard footsteps behind him. "Daniel!" Dr. Reeves's voice was calm. Too calm. "I was hoping we wouldn't have this conversation." He spun around to find her standing in the doorway, still wearing her lab coat. In her right hand, she was holding a tranquilizer gun, the kind they used for large animal sedation in veterinary research. "Dr. Reeves, what is this? What have you been doing down here?" She tilted her head slightly, studying him like he was one of her specimens. "I've been advancing science, Daniel. I've been doing what others are too afraid to do, pushing past the artificial boundaries that hold us back. These are people, or they were people. You can't just..." "Can't?" She took a step closer. "That's what they said about cloning, about stem cell research, about every major advancement in genetic science. Someone has to be willing to cross the line, Daniel. Someone has to be brave enough to do what's necessary." Daniel was backing up now, his mind racing. The cages rattled behind him. The creatures could sense the tension. "I have footage. I've already sent it. If anything happens to me, don't lie to me." Her voice was sharper now. "I can see your phone. You haven't sent anything. There's no signal down here. We're in a Faraday cage. Do you think I'd be careless enough to leave this place vulnerable to outside communication?" Let me paint you a picture of what was going through Daniel's mind in that moment. Pure, primal terror. The kind that floods your system with adrenaline and makes time move differently. He was trapped in an underground lab with a woman he'd trusted, who just revealed herself to be capable of unthinkable acts. And between him and the only exit stood someone holding a weapon designed to drop a 400-pound animal in seconds. "Dr. Reeves, please, we can talk about this." "I won't." She pulled the trigger. The dart hit him in the shoulder. Daniel felt the immediate burn of the tranquilizer entering his bloodstream. He tried to run, but his legs were already getting heavy. The room started spinning. The last thing he saw before his vision went black was Dr. Reeves's face, expressionless and cold, watching him collapse to the concrete floor. But here's what Dr. Reeves didn't know. Daniel wasn't alone that night. September 13th, 2016. 2:47 a.m. Security guard Marcus Webb was doing his routine patrol of the Genesis BioTech facility when he noticed something odd on the security monitor. The door to sub-level 3 was standing open. That never happened. That level had automatic locks that engaged at midnight. Marcus had worked security for the facility for 8 years. He knew every hallway, every protocol, every person who worked late. And he knew that Dr. Reeves was down there. Her car was still in the parking lot, but Daniel Marsh's car was there too, and that was unusual. Daniel typically left by 10 p.m. at the latest. He decided to check it out. When Marcus stepped off the elevator onto sub-level 3, the first thing he noticed was the smell. Antiseptic mixed with something organic. Something that reminded him of the zoo he'd visited with his kids last summer. The second thing he noticed was the trail of blood leading down the hallway toward the restricted section. "Hello? Dr. Reeves? Anyone down here?" No response. Marcus followed the blood trail, his hand instinctively moving to the radio on his belt. The steel door marked "Restricted Access" was ajar. That's when he heard the sounds, those same impossible sounds that Daniel had heard an hour earlier. He pushed the door open wider and saw them. The creatures, the cages. And there, in the center of the room, was Daniel Marsh's body, not dead, not yet, but close. Daniel was lying in a pool of blood, his chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. But here's what haunted everyone who saw the crime scene photos later. The wounds on his body didn't come from a tranquilizer dart. They came from something else, something with claws and teeth. Marcus immediately called 911. Then he called the police. Then, in a moment of clarity that would later be credited with breaking the case wide open, he pulled out his personal cell phone and started filming everything. The creatures, the cages, the blood, Daniel's broken body. The police arrived within 15 minutes. The first responding officers had the same reaction Daniel did, absolute disbelief. This couldn't be real, but it was. They found Dr. Catherine Reeves in her office on the main floor, calmly typing notes into her computer. When Detective Sarah Chen and her partner approached her, she didn't run, didn't resist. She just looked up from her keyboard and said, "I assume you have questions?" Daniel Marsh was rushed to Desert Springs Hospital in critical condition. He'd been attacked by one of the creatures, later determined to be the giraffe hybrid that witnesses would describe from his footage. The thing had massive dental abnormalities, teeth that were closer to carnivorous predators than herbivores, and when Dr. Reeves had opened its cage and stepped back, nature, or whatever warped version of it she'd created, took its course. Daniel survived, but barely. He spent 6 weeks in intensive care, underwent 14 surgeries, and would never fully recover from his injuries. Detective Chen took the lead on what would become the most bizarre investigation of her 20-year career. The first challenge was understanding what, exactly, had happened in that underground laboratory. The Genesis BioTech facility was immediately shut down. Federal agents from the FBI, the CDC, and the Department of Defense descended on the building. What they found in Dr. Reeves's files made the crime scene look almost tame by comparison. She'd been running Project Genesis for 7 years. 7 years of illegal genetic experiments, funded through a complex web of shell companies and misappropriated research grants. She'd forged ethical approval documents, falsified safety reports, created an entire shadow operation beneath a legitimate research facility. But here's the question that kept Detective Chen up at night. Where did the human DNA come from? The answer came from an unlikely source. Dr. James Rodriguez, one of Dr. Reeves's former colleagues who'd left Genesis Biotech 3 years earlier. He contacted the police after seeing the news coverage and told them something that made the case even darker. "She was collecting samples from all of us," Rodriguez told Detective Chen in an interview. "Hair from brushes in the bathroom, coffee cups we'd throw away. She even had access to the employee health clinic. I thought I was being paranoid when I noticed her hanging around the medical waste disposal. But now, God, she was harvesting DNA from her own colleagues." The forensic analysis confirmed it. The human genetic material in the hybrid creatures came from Genesis Biotech employees, people who had no idea they were unwilling participants in Dr. Reeves's experiments. Daniel Marsh's own DNA was found in 2 of the specimens, including the one that nearly killed him. Detective Chen needed to understand the mind behind these crimes. She arranged a series of interviews with Dr. Reeves in county jail, where she was being held without bail. "Why?" Chen asked her during their 3rd interview. "Why create these things?" Dr. Reeves leaned back in her chair, perfectly composed, despite wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. "Because someone had to. Do you have any idea what we could learn from successful human-animal hybridization? The medical applications alone could save millions of lives. You attacked your assistant. You nearly killed him. An unfortunate necessity. Daniel was going to destroy years of research. You have to understand, Detective, scientific progress requires sacrifice. Always has." "Sacrifice? You stole people's DNA without consent. You created conscious beings and kept them in cages." For the first time, something flickered across Dr. Reeves's face. Not quite emotion, but something. "They're not beings, Detective. They're specimens, experiments, no different than lab rats. Except they have human DNA, human characteristics." One of them tried to speak. Dr. Reeves smiled then, and it was the most disturbing thing Detective Chen had ever seen. "Yes. Isn't it remarkable?" The prosecution's case was strong, but it wasn't airtight. The defense attorney, a sharp woman named Rebecca Martinez, argued that Dr. Reeves was conducting research, not committing assault. Yes, the research was unethical and illegal, but could they prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she'd intentionally used the hybrid creature as a weapon against Daniel Marsh? That's where the footage came in. Remember that grainy video Daniel shot on his phone? The one with the spotted creature pressing against the cage bars? Detective Chen's team had recovered it from his phone, which was found near his body. But there was more footage than just what Daniel had captured. Marcus Webb, the security guard who'd discovered the scene, had also filmed the aftermath, and critically, Genesis BioTech had security cameras throughout the facility, including sub-level 3. Dr. Reeves had disabled the cameras in the restricted room itself, but the hallway cameras were still recording. The breakthrough came when the digital forensics team recovered deleted files from Dr. Reeves's office computer. She'd been documenting everything, every experiment, every failure, every success, and buried in those files was video footage she'd recorded herself, showing her feeding the hybrid creatures. But here's what made it evidence of murder. The footage showed her training them, specifically training the giraffe hybrid to respond to aggressive behavior with violence. There was a video dated September 3, 2016, 9 days before the attack on Daniel, showing Dr. Reeves using an electric prod on the creature while having it attack a life-size training dummy dressed in a lab coat. She was conditioning it, weaponizing it. The prosecution's forensic psychologist, Dr. Amanda Foster, testified that the videos showed clear premeditation. Dr. Reeves wasn't just conducting research, Foster told the court. She was creating a biological weapon, and when her assistant discovered her work, she had already prepared the means to silence him. The trial lasted 7 weeks. The courtroom was packed every single day. Media from around the world covered the case. It had everything. Science fiction made real, ethical nightmares, attempted murder. Daniel Marsh took the stand in November 2017, more than a year after the attack. He was still using a cane, still had visible scarring on his arms and neck. His testimony was devastating. "She looked at me like I was a problem to be solved," he told the jury. "Not a person, not someone she'd worked with for 3 years, just an obstacle. And when she opened that cage, she knew exactly what would happen. She'd trained that thing. I saw it in her eyes. She knew." The defense tried to argue that Dr. Reeves had mental health issues, that her obsession with her research had caused a break from reality. They brought in psychiatrists who testified about something they called scientific monomania, an obsessive focus on research that clouds judgment and moral reasoning. But the prosecution had those videos. They had the documentation. They had proof that Dr. Reeves had been deliberately training the creatures for months. She hadn't lost touch with reality. She'd simply decided that her research was more important than human life. The jury deliberated for 3 days. And here's what haunted everyone involved in the case. During the entire trial, Dr. Catherine Reeves showed no remorse. She didn't cry, didn't apologize. She sat at the defense table taking notes like she was attending a particularly interesting lecture. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, she didn't react. She simply nodded once, as if the jury had confirmed a hypothesis she'd been testing. But there was one more twist that came out during the sentencing phase. The federal investigation into Project Genesis had uncovered something that went beyond Dr. Reeves's individual crimes. There was evidence of a larger network. Other researchers at other facilities who'd been communicating with her, sharing data, possibly conducting their own illegal experiments. The FBI launched Operation Chimera, a nationwide investigation into underground genetic research. They found 3 other labs in different states conducting similar work, arrested 4 more scientists, shut down facilities from California to Massachusetts. Dr. Reeves refused to cooperate with that investigation. When prosecutors offered her a reduced sentence in exchange for information about the network, she declined. "My colleagues' work is their own," she said. "I won't betray scientific collaboration, even if the legal system doesn't understand it." She was sentenced in January 2018. The aftermath of the Genesis case changed the landscape of genetic research in America. Congress passed the Genetic Research Ethics Act of 2018, requiring independent oversight of all facilities conducting genetic modification research. Universities implemented new protocols for DNA sample handling. The scientific community engaged in a long overdue conversation about the ethical boundaries of genetic experimentation. Daniel Marsh never returned to genetic research. He works now as a consultant for bioethics committees, helping establish safeguards to prevent cases like his from happening again. He's testified before Congress twice, written a book about his experience. He still has nightmares about that night in Sublevel 3. The hybrid creatures created by Dr. Reeves were euthanized by federal order, despite protests from some animal rights groups who argued they deserved protection as sentient beings. The decision sparked a philosophical debate that continues to this day. If we create life, what are our responsibilities to it? Marcus Webb, the security guard whose quick thinking preserved crucial evidence, received commendations from both the Henderson Police Department and the FBI. He left security work and now trains law enforcement on evidence preservation in unusual crime scenes. Dr. Catherine Reeves was convicted of attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon — the hybrid creature was legally classified as a weapon — conducting illegal genetic experiments on human subjects, theft of biological materials, fraud, and multiple violations of federal research ethics laws. She was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole, plus 75 years. She's currently incarcerated at FCY Victorville in California, where she spends her time writing scientific papers that no journal will publish. The Genesis BioTech facility was demolished in 2019. The land was decontaminated and now sits empty, a chain-link fence surrounding the property with biohazard warning signs every 20 feet. But sometimes, late at night, security guards patrolling nearby buildings report hearing sounds in the desert. Strange sounds that don't match any animal they know. And they wonder, could something have survived? Could there be more creatures out there that Dr. Reeves never documented? The official answer is no, but the question lingers. Daniel Marsh has said that the hardest part isn't the physical scars or the nightmares, it's the knowledge that Dr. Reeves truly believed she was doing the right thing, that in her mind, she was a pioneer, not a criminal. She would do it all again, Daniel said in a recent interview. Given the chance, she'd create those things again, and she'd still see me as the villain for trying to stop her. This case reminds us that the line between scientific advancement and ethical horror can be frighteningly thin, that the pursuit of knowledge without moral guardrails can lead us into darkness we never imagined possible. Daniel Marsh survived his encounter with Project Genesis, but he'll carry the physical and psychological scars for the rest of his life. This story is dedicated to his resilience and to his ongoing work to ensure that no one else ever experiences what he did in that underground laboratory. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Some knowledge comes at too high a price, and some experiments should never have been conducted at all.